All right. So in meditation, I keep on getting this message, and I'm not quite sure what it's about yet. Because it matches up with the stuff I'm seeing out there and that I'm dreaming about. And it's not matching up so much with, well, it's not really yet here in the 3D, right?
Right.
So I'm getting used to that being okay, right? Because it just is, right? But the message, and I'm like, okay, well, I accept this and I allow it, and it's huge, right? But why am I still keeping getting the messages of like, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening? I'm like, I know what's happening. Like, tell me something I don't know,
Right.
And it has to do with that completeness, the completion thing that we're texting about later on in the week. And it was, so to share here. So it was just this amazing, incredible experience that I've had. And it's like the energy has stayed in the background. Like, it's like I have to sort of engage into the 3 and 4D stuff, and then, but I feel it running at all times. So I had this dream, and it was like the first part. Oh, so the first part was the dream where my twin flame, who, whatever, we have that loving and separate and, very happy lives, whatever, called me and said, well, I'm buying my tickets. I'm buying my plane tickets to go home. It's, it's time. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll do the same. And it was such this level of, and it wasn't like this, it had nothing to do with romantic love or anything else. It was this huge amount of divine love and allowance of, we're finally here, right?
Right.
That there was so much bliss that came in from this. It's just, and then the next day I went into meditation, and the visualization is so stunning that like it just stays with me so clearly, where I saw that part of me and me just be, and now I've seen this for a long time. So it's weird that suddenly this looks like something, it feels something different, right? Because there's nothing else to really, I wasn't thinking about this. This was not even like on my radar. I was like, yeah, I did this already. So right. Or apparently it's the next part of the spiral. Right. So that part of me and me, like coming back together, or really like allowing the separate entities of it dissipate, right? To come back to wholeness again, which I thought I had already done, but it was such this explosion of love, of like love that I have not, the only way I could explain it is love I have not felt in the physical body ever. Like, not just in this life. It's almost like, this is it. This is how it comes in.
Right.
And it's been so amazing. And yet I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
But then in this meditation, I saw this, and it was like this, almost a ceremony. Because what happened was as that happened, all of a sudden it looked very Hindu-like, which was interesting, right? Like it had like I saw these mandalas, and I saw this old like gold. It was almost like this gold palatial room, and it was very sort of ceremonial. And then I even saw Ganesha, like, which was really interesting, because it's not like this is something that I, identify with so much. And then all of a sudden I saw this door open, but it was like a front door to a house. But it was a door to some place energetically. And I'm not saying a physical place, but maybe, whatever, but it was like a big, huge house. And it was like this door opened to be able to be in that house from here when I wasn't able to do that before, whatever that means. Right. So I was shown, and this was in meditation, I was shown like, and I was like walking through the house, and I was like, oh my God, this will make it so much easier. This is so much easier.
Yeah.
And then again, another big surge of this love that's just been incredible. And the vibration has just been awesome. Right. So in the 3D, the only thing that's really like reflected that has been this constant like shift of upgrading of things with flow, right? There was my water heater, there was the washer dryer,
right.
And then we just we changed our internet over to fiber this weekend and shifted a bunch of that. And so it's almost like all of this stuff is like opening up to this other level of flow, which brings in, it's almost like this, and I feel all this consciousness, I don't want to say beings, but just another facets, right? Around watching, like and it's very similar, except at a very, very different level than when I first had what I call my grand awakening. And that's all just been within this past week. Now, I know you said you had some similar stuff, and it was like this interesting bubble of like bliss that sort of came in and this wholeness and stuff.
Right. Yeah. And it's almost like it's holding all the pieces and parts of me together that I've brought together, but yet holding it together in this space to walk through this time and iteration.
It's almost like we're allowing, it's like there were all these little crumbs that came into alignment, right?
Yeah.
Which previously prevented us from being in that full vibration of ability to hold that.
Right. Yeah. It's, I'm a Star Trek person, and it's like an episode I saw where somebody was building building like their own little cosmos in a part of the ship. And it's like, I feel like I've built that and I've brought it in.
The hologram deck.
The holodeck, yeah.
The holodeck, that's it. The holodeck, that's right.
It was like I don't know, it's like an opening that I am the opening into another place that's here.
Right. That we haven't been able to.
And I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I do.
Or how to use it, or.
Yep. Yet.
Right. Haven't remembered, but it just seems like it's, and every now and then something will come in that like gunks up the flow.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. And it's like taking a step back or just sitting down and remembering. And then it's like everything kind of realigns and reshifts, and it's like, okay, now I can go on.
Right.
And maybe that's why I'm so tired today, is that maybe there was another big shift. Because over the weekend, I did a lot of, you know what, I'm just not accepting that anymore.
Right.
I'm done with that, and I'm not even going to pretend that that's okay. I'm done with that, and I am moving in this direction, whether any of this comes with me or not.
Yep, I'm pretty much in the same place. Like, oh, just going to do this. And as it's presented to me, it's like, okay, consider, shift, go. Consider, shift, go.
Right.
Like, there's no hesitation. There's very little, but there's very little I'll think about it. Like, there's one thing I'm like, I'll think about it. And actually what I said to the universe was like, okay, look, I've had these huge shifts in this past like couple weeks. Can I just have a week to sit on something just please right now?
Yeah.
And sort of, like allow myself to assimilate all of this. But,
well, and I'll feel the tug of whether it's the mind or the ego or whatever going, well, what about when, well, wait, I've got to think about this. And it's like, actually, no, that decision's already made, and you just need to bring your thoughts in line with it.
Yeah. Right. And that's really what I'm doing with this other stuff. Like, okay, just let me get all aligned, keep in that alignment, allow that this continued alignment, because this is faster than the speed of thought. I mean, it is just bam, bam, bam now. Right. And that's 3D, the 3D, the 4D and everything else, which of course further manifests what looks like complete chaos in the 3 and 4D, right?
Yeah.
Individually and collectively. And like, look at everything that's going on. And so it's interesting because it's so easy. So I kept on asking for clarity as this goes through, as this is happening, for clarity and understanding and remembrance on like what's going on. And I have found the one thing that I have had to step back from and stay in observance is seeing the chaos, seeing very clearly
Right.
The habits that we're in and what is holding us back from getting past the chaos collectively, and being able to see that without judgment, right? Without judging, because that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, let me just step back and say, yep, nope, it's all perfect.
Well, this weekend, I know I experienced a lot of moments of looking at that chaos and going, yes, I completely see from the bigger picture that the crumbling away of all this is absolutely what needs to happen. However, I just feel that tug of, it's fine when it's something that you judge as despicable or undesirable or whatever, but it's when it's something that you find beauty in, you're like, well, but I don't want that to go away.
Right.
So,
right. And there's no exclusions. It's all inclusive. It's all or nothing. Right.
Right. And so I would find myself all about, this needs to go. And then I'd be like, but not this. I really like that.
Yeah.
Really like that. So let's just hang on to this for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Or let's be sad that it's going. And it's like, there's no sadness in any of it.
No time. No. Yeah. And that's been, and so, with a lot of the events that are going on in the news and everything else. And it's like, and people, and this is funny because I got into a whole debate with my mother last night about, because right away everybody's like clenching down on gun control, right? And like with like the shooting in Florida, and we have all these shootings going on in schools and all kind of stuff. And I was like, so, and she like, and everybody, and it's great that everybody's getting incentivized to do something, right? Except we're still pointing outside of ourselves. We're still pointing out at something else and blaming something else, right? And so I was trying to explain to her, I'm like, well, it's really only a tiny pebble of the bigger picture. And I said, it has nothing to do with gun control. What it really has to do with is the romanticism that we give to like how we solve our problems by enforcing our will on other people.
Right.
By saying that militaristic action is okay. If the government says it's okay and we all agree it's okay, well, it's okay for us to kill people in the name of something.
Right.
That's okay to take a gun and shoot them then.
Right.
It's not okay if somebody takes a gun and shoots them in a high school. Right.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, all of a sudden it's come home and it's my kid or it's my neighbor or whatever. And it's like, right. But what about the people who get killed in war, the civilians that there's plenty of that goes on every day around the world. Right.
Right.
And we have so much that we have embedded in this egoic, separated, based existence that's what we're detangling. And this is a controversial subject because everybody just wants to say, oh yeah, but, and they want to just enforce Seneca's their will and their ego of like what they believe is right. And I'm going, but really, anything in separation is still separation.
Yeah. Well, I know we were driving around and it's like, I'll look up and I'll go, okay, why are the flags at half-mast today?
Yeah.
And then I'll make some horrible joke about, oh yeah, Trump's in office still. And then I'll go, well, I don't know why we ever fly them at full mast because there's a tragedy every day. Every day.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, when are we going to see it? I saw this map and it was incredible, like all the shootings and stuff.
Yeah, I saw that.
Since the beginning of the year. And it's only February. And I'm like, wow. And yet, when are we going to like, and in the spiritual world, everybody who's watching this and anybody who gets their eyes on this or just something to consider is, when are we going to stop pointing fingers, even in the spiritual world, and saying, oh, it's this. And we need to like, but it's time for us to come together.
Yeah.
Right. In unity and unconditional love. That kid that shot everybody else is us, is me, is you.
Right.
He's not separate. And
the other thought that occurred to me in all of this is that what better face to put on something as being attention getting as our youth,
Right.
whether it's high school or elementary or whatever, is they're also so new to this separation from just coming in from birth, whatever. Who better to point out this is unacceptable?
Yeah. And I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad for everybody to be getting up in arms, but at the same time, it's not just gun control. It's our entire way of living.
Oh, yeah.
Look at our movies and our stories. Like the movies glorify killing people. It's okay. It's funny. You can have dark comedies and everything else. It's okay, in this situation. It's okay to play, war games on video games, 10 hours a day, but it's not okay to walk into a high school and kill other people. It's okay to go to another country and kill other people, but it's not okay, in the name of democracy, which we don't even have, right?
Right. Yeah.
In the name of whatever, in the name of God, right? How many since the beginning of time, right? Yeah. But it's not okay to do it on my terms, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, but if we're going to we live in separation, and that's all part of it. And so for us, why it's getting so loud all over the place is, when are we going to look in the mirror and say it's time to change the way to do this?
Right.
In the unity and wholeness, to say, you know what? Let's not vilify the kid, right? Who did this? Right. He's the soul who stepped up and said, "Okay, well, if we get to this point, I'll volunteer."
Yeah,
I agree to do it. And say, there are so many things, and I don't even like going into the details. So it's like my mother's like, "Well, but," and I'm like, and I'm not even pointing this out at my mother. I'm pointing this at, this is a general conversation going on right now. And I'm like, if we remembered how to honor each other in a place of my truth and your truth can be different, and I don't have to enforce my truth on yours, right? We're one, all consciousness is all part of the same thing. Then it changes when we start to actually live that. It really changes the way we perceive things. It changes the way.
And it's that shift that's got to happen for this chaos to be what it needs to be.
Right.
Whether that's to go on and finish, or to just be what it needs to be.
Yeah, because otherwise we're just going to blow ourselves up and start over again, like we've done a whole number of times, right? Yeah. Which, collectively we said we were done with that this time around. So let's see how we can get past it in a different way without, blowing ourselves up in some way, shape, or form, to create more separation all over again. And when we've headed in such a great direction, we really have come such a long way. And there's this friction within us now of like, do we let this separation die? And actually, can we see things differently, and can we live them differently? And our voices, those of us who see and live it differently, it's important for our voices to get out there more and more, so that people can like others can see by example more so than anything. Because you and I can't force anybody to see anybody and see it this way, right?
No.
I always tell people, check with your own truth, check with your own guidance, and like there are all these understandings though that are important, which is the ego is the harboring of all things separate, right? So fear and anxiety and anger and guilt, doubt, sorrow, pain, judgment, expectation, shame, all that stuff are all energies and emotions of the ego in my opinion.
Right.
And because the ego's job was to explore separation identity. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just to acknowledge that was what its job was. And now we're changing that for it to police it the other way. Say, let's bring this all back together in aligned thought, word, and deed, and unity and unconditional love. So how do we do that differently? And I think that's what we're being faced with. And it's not going to go away. It's not going to get any better. And
it's only going to get louder and worse.
It is, and it's
right.
And it's like, and look at how loud it's already gotten, and it's only February.
I know. Right? I know.
It's like, well, we can sit here and try, because here's what's happening. Energetically, things are getting faster and faster.
Right.
So that it's going to become so fast that we're not going to, like, it's becoming so fast that we don't have time to waste our energy on these little details that we think will fix the Band-Aid.
Right.
Or put the Band-Aid on it. No more time for Band-Aids. Like, and we've been getting that message for a decade and longer,
Right.
like,
we've already had our time to practice about how to create through thought.
Yeah.
Now the practice is over. It's like we're there and we're creating in the nanosecond.
Yes. And so, and we have plenty of souls out there that are here incarnate that have volunteered to continuously push that in our faces in the 3 and 4D. It's not even started to be over yet. So the more that we can, and so what does it come down to, right? And this sounds so simple and people like brush it off, they laugh at it, and he's like, okay, self-love. Self-love is where it comes down to.
That's
and
right.
They think, oh yeah, that's lame, right? Oh yeah, okay, that won't fix the world's problems. Actually, it will.
I know, because it's like selfish is such a negative connotation, and it's been touted as that's what's wrong with everybody, is they're so selfish. Well, they're selfish. The way they've defined it has nothing to do with self-love.
Yeah. Right. Because I've had people say things like, and I don't pick on anybody, or we pick on everybody equally because it's all part of the same thing, right? But many will say things like, oh well, and like for example, Trump, right? Oh, he's the biggest egotist and blah blah blah. And I say, well, actually, you want to say he is, but actually he is the epitome of what an example as president of the United States, to be so in self-loathing that he is an egomaniac. That's what egomania really comes from, is so much deep self-loathing,
right,
that I have to enforce my worth on others. Like I have to demand it and enforce it to prove it to others, because I don't believe it about myself.
Absolutely.
And many don't understand that that's where that comes from. You know? So, and I'm like, no, actually egomania is all about lack of self-love, not like a huge, like not a narcissistic love is all about having to prove love from outside of you because you don't believe it within yourself at a desperate level. Right.
Right.
And we probably have more narcissism and egotism out there more than ever before, because all this stuff is coming to the surface. So actually, if you look at Trump, and if you want to look at it that way, it's really he's a perfect representation of the collective in this country and the collective in this world. Like, we want to pretend it's not there, but it is.
Right.
So much
we have to elevate it to that position.
Yeah.
So it couldn't be shoved back under anymore.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, great. Yay. Like, yay, not yay. However you want to look at it, right? No judgment.
Right.
But it's like, but what are we going to do with that? Like, everybody. And so what our habit is, let's fight it. Let's, be cranky with it. Let's whatever. But how about if we look in the mirror with it and say, hey, if that's in my reality, there's something of that inside of me. Right.
What's my little piece of this lesson?
Yeah. And then let me focus on changing that, so that part of the whole has now been resolved and assimilated and completed.
And what that does is if you change the foundation of all of that just a little bit at a time, eventually it has no choice but to either shift with that or just crumble away so that new can be built.
And I think a lot is crumbling away right now. That's part of what's going on, because there is still friction of the bipolarity of those who do see that and those who are, like not even close to it in remembrance of that. And there's no, there's no judgment on that, but that's what
and it needs to be such a thorough, to where there's no molecules left. That's why it can't just be, well, why haven't we impeached him? Well, because we're not done. We're not done with him yet.
There'll just be somebody else just like him right behind him until we look in the mirror.
Right.
So it's a very different perspective, because we want to take this, what are we used to in a crisis situation? We're used to reacting, right? Instead of stepping back and observing.
Right.
And I've been stepping back and observing. And so my biggest thing I've noticed is just this importance to not judge, right? Judge short-sightedness, not to judge any of that, right? Because it's still judgment.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, so, but it's really important for us to start, all of us to start talking, those of us who have that consciousness of unity and unconditional love, to start really talking about it openly, because many are still like in the closet about it, like uncomfortable with talking about it to others. And, you know, it's like the conversation I had with my mother, because here's the thing. Here's somebody who, and I'm not, there's no judgment, but this is just part of the personality of glorifying the military. Like, we have that as a whole national thing, right? We have it internationally. And so it's okay for me to talk about gun control, or it's okay for me to talk about certain things and looking inside and all kinds of stuff, until I get to that place where I say, yeah, and it's time for us to stop glorifying militaristic actions, because it's just perpetuating separation.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what are you doing there?
I was with you till you did that.
Like, yeah, you know, but there's certain things, and it's like, no exclusions. It's either all or nothing, right? And that's what it's time for us to recognize. And, you know, like, everybody will argue about this. It's like, the more we come to a place of love, the higher vibration we hold, the more this stuff just shakes out of our reality. Like, it doesn't even like need to have a whole bunch of chaos. Individually, we can have a smooth ride of it as everything else crumbles. It's our choice, because what the mind does is, oh my God, but to watch that happen would be such a nightmare, right? And that's what's like, oh, but like, no, you know, and even talking to my daughter, it was like, no, but like, you know, it's baby steps. You got to take, you know, and I was like, okay, well, at least people are doing something, but don't be short-sighted about it and stop there and think that that's the answer, because it's not.
Right.
It'll just start happening a different way. You know?
Yep.
The way to really enforce like gun control is to say, I don't need to point a gun at anybody.
Right.
Like, it's so simple, right?
Yep.
I'm going to put this on pause because I need to run to the ladies' room. Okay. Yeah. And you know, and a side note before we go back to this other stuff, because people get very incensed on this entire discussion when you talk about military and everything else. And I'm like, it's not judging those who are in the military.
Right.
It's just stating it's time for us to change this glorification of separation, because that's all it is. And why do you think so many have PTSD today? Because we're all waking up collectively, even those in the military, and I've worked with a number of them, because it's somewhere deep inside, they know killing somebody in the name of somebody else is still separation.
Right.
Still killing somebody.
Yep.
And whether the government says it's okay or not, they know it's, and it's not that it's not okay. They know that it's still separation based. And if we're moving toward that remembrance of unity and unconditional love and wholeness, and for us to really move forward into this next thing, to this next phase, it's time for us to come to that. Well, then it just doesn't work with us vibrationally anymore.
Right.
That's why there's, and that's clearly, and I see it all the time of those who I've worked with that have PTSD. That's where it is. There's that friction that goes on inside at some level.
Right. It's that internal conflict that takes so much energy to hold apart, separate from you, to be able to function.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, you know, we can change it. It's our choice. And you know, it's funny because I always tell people, like, well, my husband's a vet and he was in the military.
So's mine.
So was yours. Yeah. So, but the thing is, my husband says all the time, he goes, it's not my identity though. He goes, I did it as a job. It was a job I had.
Right.
I signed up for it. I volunteered. It wasn't like I interviewed, I did more than took a test or whatever.
Right.
He's like, I signed up for it. I signed a contract for 6 years. That's what I did for my job. I got paid for what I did. And then I got done and I moved on with my life. He's like, I think I deserve nothing more than anybody else because I did my job.
Right. Yep.
He's like, I'm not going to park in, veteran spots and all that kind of stuff and take advantage. He's like, he thinks it's ridiculous. He's like, because as anybody who's worked for a company before, do they get those special parking spots and, whatever? Do they get this, whatever? He's like, yeah, the government, obviously, if it's a job with the government should take care of them. Right. And they did
right.
fine. But to glorify it and romanticize it, he himself is just like, it was a job.
Right.
A job. He goes, a job I definitely would not do again.
Right.
So So the point is, there's no judgment on that, but it's just, the thing is, we glorify this and everything else. And it's like, well, but it's still a choice that people make. It's a job that they take. They do get
Right.
paid to do it.
Right. Right.
And then they can move on, they can move on when they're done. But the thing is, for us to stop glorifying it as like this, awesome thing to do, an awesome life to live and everything else, because it's just perpetuating that separation. So it's time for us to start thinking differently. And that's part of that whole thing. So going back to, let's put that on the shelf now. We can talk about that one forever.
How did we get here?
Yeah. But going back to the message I keep on getting, is that so I keep on getting this sacred union, this like, and so I see that wholeness within ourselves, right? The really deep, and it's really a deep, deep, deep alignment with our wholeness, right? To allow all the doors to open, which is like, even saying it in words just makes it such a shadow of what it really is, like in hugeness, right? But also that in that wholeness, it's time to be visible. As an example.
Well, and if the vision that just, the image that just came to me when you were saying that is that if you think about it, if each one of us who can come to this place becomes whether you want to call it a portal or a door or a bubble or whatever, if we can just hold that vibration, then those that are drawn towards that vibration through the cellular remembering of it will eventually become one too, to the point where it's that inevitability that just happens through that evolution of everyone changing their vibration to match that. And if the key is to just hold that vibration and to be that vibration.
Right. And part of that's why this big wave of teaching is to remember that it's all you.
Right.
That you are that vibration. That
you
can hold that. You can be unconditional love. You are the divine. It's a matter of realizing it and embodying it and allowing it. And all of that power is inside of you. That's why all of this is so important. And the self-love is, I only let myself do that if I like completely love myself in this higher.
It's funny, those terms you just put it in. The card I drew before we got on the call was the serpent of fire, and it's coming to the power within yourself. And the first thing it says is you have to realize that the standards that you've judged your power by in the past are no longer there.
Yes.
And that so that criteria is gone, and that one of the lessons is to acknowledge the power within yourself. And then the second lesson is trust it and then allow it.
Yeah.
So that falls right into where, self-love is the basis for all.
And not just allow it, but emanate it and embody it and let others see it, because it's not enough to be in the closet. And I mean, it is. I mean, it's perfect, of course.
But it's better than where you were.
But we're talking about how, like, so many ask, well, how can I help others? How can I help others? And this is where helping yourself helps others, because when you can embody and you trust and you have that unconditional self-love and that faith in yourself that you have all of this, right? And you emanate that and you hold that vibration, and you're, like you're saying, you're drawing other people to it just by holding that space. Right.
It's that magnetic attraction that you can't explain.
Yeah. And then people are like, well, I want that. Like, I'm ready to do that, And it's like, okay, well, if you're ready to do that, then this is what's to be done. And it's all inside of you. Right. And that's the way we help other people, is that realization, because the more of us who are like that, and the more of us who not only are like that and hold that space, but then are welcoming to help others learn, or, not learn, but remember how to do that themselves. Right. That's going to be the most productive.
So what do you see is relevant for right now to foster all that we just talked about? What do we see is holding us back, standing in the way, because it's like,
it's still that self-trust. It's still the trust.
Yeah.
I see a lot of practitioners, not just Trinity, but in like a lot, like almost all different practices, they only go to a certain point and then they shrink back on themselves because they don't believe that they can do it. They don't, like, at a deep level, they only believe they're so powerful, that they're only allowed to be so powerful that.
Well, and I think even those that are stepping out and stepping forward, I still think that there is a new level of trust that needs to be achieved. Just like, you can say something versus it in your heart.
Right.
It's like, okay, I can trust in my head because
right.
I've logically laid all this out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like the difference between talking the talk versus walking the talk.
Yes.
Because I know for myself that, it's not second nature yet.
Well, yeah. I mean, and those of us who are even conscious and focusing on that and the ability of doing that, it's still not 100%. So I understand it's okay that we trip over ourselves, but it's the key. It's the process of allowing ourselves the space, in acceptance, say, okay, I'm going to trip over myself in this, and okay, and I'm just going to be observant and aware of it. That's a big difference, is to be able to be aware of it within ourselves so that we can then shift it when we trip over ourselves, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a big point to focus on. Also, what was I just going to say? There was something else that came in. Well, it's all flying through today. Oh, yeah. And realizing that it is all inclusive, that it's not exclusive of anything. And that includes medicine, medical stuff, physical things, emotional things, environmental things, psychological things. All of this is changeable within ourselves. I saw this really interesting post by somebody who I'm Facebook friends with a couple of days ago. And I never replied to it. I was surprised that they had posted it because I know the person well. And they were reposting something that somebody else who does this kind of work was saying how you can't just change things in the energy, and the energy of things. And then you can't just change things in the energy of things. You have to actually change. You have to, right? Here come ego words. You have to change things in the physical. And they were talking about, like, one example was a guy who, was in his mid-40s and had physical issues and had gained a bunch of weight, and he hated his job and he hated his life and and he had a heart attack and had to go to the hospital, and and this person had helped him, like, go, went out to because their specialty was the Akashic records, and went out there and were clearing agreements and this and that, and helped him with stuff. And then he got out of bed and he got out of the hospital, but he didn't change anything. And then he ended up sick and whatever again. And it's like, so that was the point that they were saying as well. You don't change anything in the physical. You can't change everything from the energetic. And I'm like, but I beg to differ. Like, actually, the thing was that what was not focused on was where his source of not love was for himself.
Right.
Because that changing things in the physical, changing habits, like we talk about in the Trinity 1 class and the Trinity practitioner class, of aligning thought, word, and deed and unconditional love, self-love, unconditional self-love, and focusing on the self-love first and foremost over everything else. Because here's the thing, when we love ourselves, we naturally do things that nourish that and support that here in the 3D.
Yeah.
And we see it easily. When we get to a place of self-love, we're like, oh yeah, I just don't identify with that anymore. It doesn't do anything for me anymore. Like, you'll find the things that you did that were distractions, that were escapes, do not seem sexy anymore, right? So that is changing the energetic thing. It's just where we're focusing our energetic shifting, right? And it's like, no, it all does change in the energetic, because here's the thing. If you change all your patterns here, Like, you're going to do it. Like, all right, so he comes out and it's like, okay, you have to do this. You have to do this to survive, right? How long is that going to last if he doesn't do any work on himself and self-love? It's only going to last a week, a couple weeks, a couple months, you know?
Right. Right.
And then it'll be like, okay, I don't have to do this anymore. I did it. That's enough. Like,
so much of what we do is just rote and habit. And I know I was changing out some cabinet hardware, and I was going from one center pull on a drawer to like a little cup, which had 2 mounts. And I had my template and I drilled my holes, and it was like, it was just too much, too close together to where the screw, one would go in, but the other one wouldn't. And there was no give. So I was like, okay, well, I can't drill the hole again. It's already there. So I made one hole bigger, and I was just like, why is this so hard? Why is this so hard? Why am I making this so hard? And it was just like, I just kept getting angrier and angrier and more frustrated. It's like, this should be easier. And finally I just went, because I'm not stepping back and saying it is easier. Mm-hmm. This is simple. I know the answer. I can make this easier on myself, and claiming the power. Sure enough, all I had to do was make the other hole bigger to where there was plenty of space. But I was so wrapped up in it being hard and why was this hard, and angry about that I couldn't even allow myself to make it easy.
Right.
And to realize that it actually is easy, and that it always was, and that I'm the one that's making it hard.
Right. Because of our attachment to things, right?
Right. And in our profound forgetting that it is easy.
Right. Oh, and
second nature.
And not only that, but also believing that it has to be hard to be fruitful, right? Which is a belief, right, and not an actual fact.
Right. So it right, it's one thing to sit down and get into the philosophy of the whole thing and to be able to look at the bigger picture, but it's that living it in the down and dirty 3D of making it easy and living it
down to something as simple as a cabinet handle,
right? Right.
And that's what we're saying is that's what I'm seeing is there's this incredible bliss that's just coming through at this other level, right? And I feel like there's so much going on there, and I keep on getting that, reminder that that's going on in this sacred union and this like wholeness and remembrance and expansion. And now it's for us to bring that into here and hold that, space and keep that observance in everything, which is part of why probably so much has changed for me in the past, like several weeks. Cause it's just like, oh yeah, this needs to be done differently. Time to do this differently. Time to do this differently. And then once you start, it's like a snowball rolling downhill, because then it's like, well, if I'm doing this, why am I not doing this? And if I'm doing this, why am I not doing it?
Right. And it's almost like the more you do it, the more it spotlights where you're not doing it.
Yeah, because it feels so good once it gets rolling, and it's like,
yeah.
Okay, what else?
Well, and it's like the flow starts, and then you're more able to feel where it's not flowing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's it's a process. So where are we going to focus on for this? Because this is a lot right here.
Well, and I feel like we've been all over the place. I feel like there's still some, whether you want to call them catches or hang-ups or resistance, obviously, in holding the bubble that we talked about in the beginning of holding the...
We're just holding the space. That
space.
I don't like using the word bubble because, it implies separation. So whatever. Right. So holding that space of that bliss.
Right here.
Right here. Yep. Yeah. And allowing things to naturally change. And this sounds really easy, like when we say it, but change down to the tiniest, microcosm. It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's changing every cell in your body, because it's changing the vibration of that self.
And when we commit to realigning ourselves to allowing the alignment of the embodiment of our wholeness, anything that doesn't align with that, it will just fall away. That's the chaos and crumbling, right? Yeah. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of,
know when you're done.
Yeah, and we see a lot of marriages crumbling, a lot of relationships crumbling, a lot of like life situations crumbling. And I see a number of people who are right there, and they see it, and they know, like, for example, that the marriage doesn't serve them anymore, or they're done with the lessons from that, and it's time to move on.
Right.
But they're still holding on to what the thought, the ego believes is safer,
or for, in the guise of, well, I'm a good person, I'm sticking it out, or and it's you have to allow it to change. I mean, I know my marriage has turned inside out, upside down. It doesn't resemble anything that it did in the beginning, and neither do either one of us, which is the whole point.
Yeah, and it continues to be that way. And at some point, here's the thing, and this is what I talk to people, it's like, it's time for us to stop judging the success or failure of a marriage by whether the relationship continues on forever. Right. It's time for us to say, it really is time for us to say in every moment, does it still serve us both to be on this journey? And I actually posted a great video with Will Smith yesterday. I don't know if you saw it on Facebook.
I watched one. I think it was this morning. I don't know if it was you that shared it or somebody else.
Where he was talking about him and his wife, like
their happiness,
that it all comes from within themselves, and they've realized that, and they're on. They've also recognized that it's both they're not on a journey together. They're both their individual journeys, and they choose to walk together on their individual journeys, which is a much different energy, and that's really where it is for us to get to realize there's no completing me. There's no anything that's going to complete me outside of myself.
Right.
And the more we allow that to continue, and I even wrote on the post that includes like people who think the whole twin flame thing is blah, blah, blah. It's the more we do that, the more we delay the inevitability of realizing that our wholeness comes from within ourselves.
Right.
Because whether it doesn't even matter, soulmate, twin flame, however you want to look at it, whether it's your lover, whether it's your spouse or your child or your parent or your friend, doesn't matter. Those are all boxes we've put into what kind of relationship things are, when it's all us in different facets of ourselves. And when we realize that there's no hierarchy as to what's more important or less important, that we're all like, okay, the reason we broke into these facets were to have these journeys, and it's our job to finish the journeys, to complete them.
Right.
That's all that is what's important for us to do. And when we do it on our own in a place of happiness and bliss, and allowing that wholeness, and this is where it ties back to what we're talking about today, and allowing that realization, then it doesn't matter whether you're in a relationship or not. There's no like success or failure whether you're in a relationship or not. It's just where I am right now. And if it's fullness and wholeness of who I am and that realization, then that is all of what I can be.
Right.
It has nothing to do with like, is it a part of a marriage, or are you a part of a marriage or relationship, or blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. It's I think that's one of the another one of those really deep alignments that we're fighting, because we feel it. And I see so many who have felt it and still believe and then I see people who like left their marriage, and then they like fall right into another relationship where, they're just
the same thing, just over and over.
Yeah. So and that's part of going back to what I typically say is, when it might be a good idea for you to just explore yourself for a while outside of a relationship. Like outside of defining yourself through relationship. Because, it's this hole that all of a sudden somebody feels like, oh, I don't have all this stuff filling my life in this marriage that doesn't exist anymore, right? Then it's like, well, now what do I do? I need to fill the hole. Right, but you're already filling the hole. You just don't realize it yet,
Right.
And that's part of this shift. I mean, God, we could talk about this one for hours because there's so many facets.
Well, and it all still comes back down to that self-love.
Yeah.
Self-fulfillment, and that trust in yourself, and that wholeness of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I'm not sure we can put that into just a little creation statement.
Yeah, I would say, let's see, the allowance of that, like in being able to accept that and step back and observe it and accept it and
Trust
allow it.
the process.
Yeah. And to trust in ourselves, trust in the whole. It's all perfect right now. And to trust in the understanding and remembrance that self-love, that unconditional self-love is truly how we serve everything, is coming back to that remembrance. Because everybody's like, well, how do I serve mankind? How do I serve others? Well,
by serving yourself.
It's what you serve by serving yourself in that way. Because at the end of the day, what happens is when you are truly emanating that love and wholeness, like, and this, I explain this over and over again, it's not like I'm giving to somebody because I feel like I have to show them I'm a good person, to be a good person, to blah, blah, blah. It's when I'm in that place of wholeness and unconditional love, it's like natural for me to, of course, just overflow and have surplus, or there's that surplus economy thing, right?
Right.
Surplus existence of saying, I have so much that's overflowing that I just can't do anything but give it to you, of course.
Right. Which becomes infectious, essentially.
Exactly. That's the pay it forward thing. It's
right.
All this kind of stuff. And you don't pay it forward to have it come back to you. It's just because you have this overflow and surplus and saying, I am full and complete and overflowing. And I just would love to share it with more,
Right.
So whatever it is, so that we can get there, so we can step back and observe ourselves on that path and to accept, the path of what that looks like, to allow things to change, even at the deepest levels, so that we can allow ourselves to resolve and accept and embrace and allow, and to step into that with trust, and yeah, trust and ease and flow and bliss and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And whatever else.
Yeah, and anything else that happens to come up.
That's right. All right, you ready?
I am.
All right. Well, that one's going to take a while to complete.
Wow, that was awesome.
It was.
I felt like it was a spring cleaning of the soul. It was like it was like all the windows and the doors were open.
Yeah, not just the individual soul. It was almost like this collect. It was huge. And
It was.
it was almost too big to like perceive what was going on. I was like, oh, I'm just going to sit in this.
Yeah, it was.
That was 15 minutes and it felt like, 5.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, well, let's stay with that this week because that feels really good.
Yeah, I mean, lots of visuals of just stuff flowing through.
Yeah, that felt amazing.
And I feel a lot in my throat and head, just opening up and beaming.
Yeah. I felt the behind the heart.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, on the crown too. Like, yeah, it was nice. Well, actually, it was almost like all of it. Like, it was like the whole physical body just became one big old energetic chakra.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Opened up.
I felt like I was floating. Like, I literally, because when I sit at my desk here, I have yoga blocks
Right.
underneath, and I actually usually put my feet on the yoga blocks.
Uh-huh.
Is a more comfortable way to sit since I'm usually sitting at the desk for, extended periods of time. And I just was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm so hot. Like, I feel like I'm floating out. And I like actually at some point put my feet on the ground, like just to see if I'm still here.
Just to see if this still works.
I feel like I'm so like almost like 5 feet taller. It's so bizarre. Yeah. Really cool though. Whoa. That was really cool in such a different way, as it always is every week.
I know. This seemed like a lot of housekeeping and just leveling up to make sure everything's at the level it needs to be to continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was awesome.
That was just what I needed.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. And I just, like I said, I feel like it's so big that like it just is going to keep on rolling through, just holding that.
Oh, yeah.
Roll out for it. To roll it through and out and realize
waves are going to keep going out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm all for that.
No kidding.
Yay for this week. Can't wait to see how that turns out. Yep. All right. Well, hold on a second. Just going to get my mouse to work again because I went to sleep. It's the one thing about the wireless mouse, which I love, but okay. All right. So thanks everybody for joining us, and sit on that. Do it all week. Use it as your intention. Come back to it, and we'll see you next time.